So what do you want to talk about today?
I was thinking that the thing that feels most relevant right now is the concept of purpose.
Hmm.
And it kind of goes into what you were just saying.
Yeah.
Like you're right now starting to uncover your next level of purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that purpose can get so misconstrued and it can make, I don't know, I feel like it can make us feel like we're not enough if we're not doing what we think is a purpose, or we just think that it's bullshit and wonder why we're not feeling fulfilled when there is some sort of purpose to it,
Yeah.
what stage we're in life.
Totally. Yeah. And, purpose is something that it's such a big topic, but I think it's pretty simple, but it is something that, not doing private clients right now. Obviously, I'm not having that same level of interaction one-on-one, but even within my soul
Yeah.
expansion calls and in the responses that I get on social media and on my content, purpose is a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be that as, those of us who are sort of stepping into this role as the new leaders for the spiritual community and the spiritual experience, which I think that you and I are definitely reaching that point where we now have a message that we're ready to share with a broader audience, or we're getting deeper into our own experience, our purpose, so that we
Yeah.
can sort of, guide the next wave of people. But I think that there's a whole new slew of people that are starting to sort of become aware of this idea of,
Yeah.
living your purpose, or, your purpose being this thing that really is bigger than you. And it's kind of the whole point of why you came
Right.
in this lifetime. So yeah, I think it's a huge topic. I think that it's something that, I think you're right. Like for a lot of people, it can feel like a, not a bad thing, but it's upsetting for a lot of people, right? Because they feel
Right.
confused, or they don't understand it, or maybe their purpose is something that feels totally different than what
Than
they've
where
been
they
through.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just even trying to understand how to connect to what your purpose is.
Yeah.
That I think like I was thinking about it earlier and I was like, okay, well, right now my purpose feels like it is to be a teacher and to teach what I have learned and am in the process of learning.
Yeah.
And my purpose is to open other people up to see themselves in new ways and to be open to new ideas of who they are and maybe find their own purpose. But that wasn't always my purpose, right? Like that wasn't my purpose when I was 5. That wasn't my purpose when I was 11. But I think that there has always been an undercurrent of a teacher in me.
Yeah.
I think like speaking of like the gay thing, my parents have told me a few times that they are so thankful that I came into their lives because it's taught them a lot about acceptance. And if I wasn't gay, then there would be a lot of things that they wouldn't learn.
Yeah.
And so unwittingly, I was a teacher in that role, in that way,
Yeah.
But there's times when my purpose was just to learn and to explore and to try and figure shit out. And so it's not like a career path. The purpose is not the same thing, right? It's not like, okay, I finished school and now I know my purpose in life and I'm just going to go do my purpose.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think that, one thing that I'm seeing really emerge, and one thing that, it's interesting since I've decided to stop seeing private clients, like I see my work moving in this really amazing direction that's becoming very clear and much deeper in my level of understanding of who I am and what I'm here to do and how I can share and, sort of guide other people, or at least be a beacon, right? Be the lighthouse so that other people can find their way. And I think that truth leads us to our purpose. Like, I think you find your purpose
Right.
when you get into your truth and you feel, when I say this all the time, not only you know what your truth feels like. So oftentimes people come to me and they're like, well, what's my purpose? What's my point? I want to do something, right? Like I'm unhappy in my job, or I don't feel satisfied by my career anymore, or whatever. So I want to find my purpose so that I can get out of this discomfort or get out of this dissatisfaction. And I always say to them, well, you got to get real with yourself first. Like your purpose doesn't solve your problems. Like
Right.
when you get into your truth and you open up and do that work for yourself to discover what's real for you, that uncovers your purpose,
Right.
because the two are inextricably linked. You can't have one without
Right.
the other. And you and I know that, like, there is no way that you and I could be doing what we're doing if we had not been through our own crawling on our hands and knees through the pits of despair and whatever
Yeah.
it was that we had to do with our own inner stuff and getting all that sorted. And I really believe that your purpose is already here. It's already within you. Like your purpose is what you agreed to for this lifetime. Like you already said yes to it, but it's your job to uncover it. And you can't go through that door until you're in your truth and being really, really honest with yourself. It's like you can't bypass having to do that work,
Yeah.
because that's what allows me, right? Like my willingness to go through my own stuff is what allows me to help someone else go through that experience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've known for a long time that I wanted to be a teacher, and it's come about in that I was meant to be a teacher, and it's come about in so many different ways. Conversations with friends and starting down that road of training and being a teacher of the body. But I couldn't step into where I am today, and in this feeling of like really owning that, and owning like that I'm not just a teacher of the body, but that I'm a teacher of spirit and life and whatever you want to call it. But I wouldn't be able to do that had I not uncovered my own you know curtains between. It's how it feels. It's like just these layers of curtains where you're like, yeah, this is a little closer to the truth. I'm kind of,
Yeah.
that thing is not relevant for me anymore. This is a little closer to the truth. And I feel now that I'm at the closest I've ever been to the truth. But it always continues, right? Like there's never an ending.
Yeah. And I think that it's kind of like, when you were saying how you felt like one of your early purposes in this life was to just be a teacher for your parents just through being who you are, right? You didn't sit down and like 5 years old or 6 years old and say, okay, I'm going to show you what it's like to be gay now or whatever. Like you just were who you were, and that's how they learned. And I think our purpose is always relative to our level of awareness and our understanding. Like I can't teach someone else or help someone else or guide someone else or create a space for someone else to confront their own pain and anger with fearlessness and love in their heart if I have not also done that. Like I have looked some ugly, ugly stuff in the face about myself. And in the end, what I've realized is this is just a part of me that needs my love and attention, and it doesn't
Yeah.
scare me anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like it was funny on the soul expansion calls yesterday, one of the women was saying how she was like, she's faced her demons and she's made friends with her dragons. She was like, and now they're like my pets. She was like, I have, within my internal world, I have these demons and these dragons and these dark aspects of me. She goes, but now I don't see them as big, scary things. I see them as cute little, it's like the world's ugliest dog contest, right? It's like, so it's that same kind of thing. Like I am fearless in engaging with other people because I have confronted those own fears within myself. And I know that it's ultimately nothing that you need to be afraid of.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting because now that I'm moving into the gay thing,
Those
and I'm
fears are coming up
uncovering
again.
a whole new level of parts of myself that have yet to be loved completely. Because, you and I were talking about this the other day on the phone, like I've known about this gay thing for a couple of years. It's been on my mind that at some point I was going to be, stepping forward to work with gay men.
We've talked about it for a long time.
Yeah. And I think that I've been putting it off and putting it off because part of it wasn't quite time. And then the past couple of weeks, I've definitely been putting it off from the sense of like, okay, it is time and I just don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah.
Because to be present when in front of, my community as a gay man with no artifice, with no defense, with no protection in terms of, that buffer of, being bitchy or catty or clever or charming or whatever, or, having the outfit or the body or whatever it was that I was trying to project as this barrier between who they are and who I really was, or who I thought they were. It's really intimidating for me. It's really intimidating, that idea of just being seen in that way. So, it's uncovered a
So
whole.
what intimidates you? Like, what do you feel like would happen?
I think it's just, those years of being, for me, for the first half of my life at 45 years old, the first half of my life, basically, up until around 25 years old, gay was something that was dangerous.
Yeah.
Being gay was a thing that I felt that I had to be afraid of, or that I had to hide, or that I had to make invisible, because that is what made me a target. At least that's what I thought. What I see now is that didn't really make me a target so much as just the fact that I was different, and that I came here to be different, and I came here to challenge people's perceptions. And that's just energetically who I am. And also I wasn't comfortable with myself. And I think that energetically makes other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it was a whole cocktail of things, but, for my logical, rational understanding of it, being gay was something that I was ashamed of. It was something I tried to hide, because it was something that I felt was what made me a target.
Yeah.
So to stand up and be visible and be seen as that person, there's still that part of me that feels that it's dangerous, and that feels like, oh my God, I'm going to be rejected. And that's the other thing is, once you finally make it to the gay community, there's still this idea that they're going to fix me, right? It's like the promised land. When I get to this place and when I do this thing, it's like the purpose. When I discover my purpose, it will
Right.
fix me. It will make me feel good about myself. It will make me happy. And no, it doesn't. So, even that sense of getting to the gay community and still feeling like I still don't love myself. These people were
Yeah.
supposed to take care of that for me,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know. It's a very interesting thing. And I don't really have the answer, It's like I have a lot of ideas about what it could be, but ultimately I just have to investigate it and see, and just be curious about it.
About what's going to happen with it,
Well,
or
just,
your
yeah,
fear?
why am I being called in this direction? Like, I don't think my purpose is something for me to define. I
Yeah.
think that's the irony of it all, is it's really, once you get to that point where you're sort of allowing yourself to be guided towards it, you're not the one that has to decide what it is. You're just the one that has to decide how you're going to give it a voice.
And it shifts and changes, like as you evolve and grow. I thought maybe a year ago that my highest purpose was to be able to lead people in meditations and to help guide people through mindfulness and meditation, because at that time it was the most interesting thing to me, and it was something that had really helped me connect to my inner truth.
Yeah.
But then as time has gone on, I realized that is a tool that I've used, and it's something that I use with clients and groups, and it's something that without it, there is no connection to yourself, I don't think, for me. And so it's a tool, but it's not the end of what I want to teach.
Yeah.
It's just a tool in my toolbox to teach, and I still don't know what my message is, right? Like, I'm going into this retreat knowing that that some big things are going to happen for people, and I'm using all the tools that I know that have helped me and that have worked with people in the past, like silence and meditation and exercise and connection and journaling and all that kind of stuff, and just fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I thought about, like, we're going to have a conversation at the beginning, the welcoming when everyone arrives, and what do I want to say? What do I want? How do I want to set the tone? And I have some ideas, but I don't want that scripted, and I don't want that to I don't want to make a declaration about the weekend. I want it to be what it's going to be. And the same thing for my meditations, and the same thing when I'm coaching. I have an idea of what might be helpful for people, but
Yeah.
it stifles me in the moment to think that I know what's coming next. And that's the same thing with the evolution of purpose, right? Like,
Totally.
I can't. So yeah, maybe a year ago I wanted to be a meditation teacher, and that just doesn't fit anymore because my purpose feels bigger. But that
Yeah.
was leading me to the next step in my purpose, just as you being an intuitive was like the step towards being a teacher, and now your teaching role is like stepping forward into a new group and a new dynamic. And it's just, that's the fun of life.
Totally.
And one of the things I was thinking of when I was thinking about purpose is like, I think that that is the thing that, I mean, like you mentioned, you find your purpose within your truth. And so the two are inextricably linked. Is that an orb on your face?
Yeah, it is. It's my grandmother visiting me. It's so funny. Every time, like sometimes in my videos, like there'll be a fly or something or dust that'll fly through the sunlight, and people will send me a message. Oh my God, at 4:32 there was an orb, and I'm like, well, it might have been, but I think it was just a fly. But I love your willingness to always see the miraculous.
Right.
Yeah.
What was I saying?
About your purpose, finding your purpose in your truth.
Oh yeah, and how they're inextricably linked. But I think that it is true that if you aren't open to your purpose or open to finding your truth or letting that come through in whatever way you learn how to do that, I think that will be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like it sounds like a strong declaration, but from personal experience, it's true.
Amen.
It
It
will,
totally is.
if you are not open to that and not actively looking at your life in that way, you're just going to keep turning to money and sex and drugs and alcohol and like whatever you can
Yeah.
use to temporarily make yourself feel better. Because I'm just now starting to really feel like the true like I'm truly awake and alive.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I'm
Isn't it?
and
And it's like
it is
it's massive. Like when you really like
totally.
let yourself move into it, it shows you a whole world that you knew. It's like, and I think we know. I think the thing is that so many of us, I think all of us on some level, instinctively and intuitively know how exactly what we are so desperate and thirsty and hungry for is on the other side of that thing. Like
Yeah.
that's what it holds it for us. And for me, the biggest lesson that I have learned through living my purpose and really understanding in my truth is trust. Trust that what I want in terms of safety and security and money and nice things and a life that feels like paradise and all those things, trust that my purpose really can bring me those things and that it will bring me those things in its way. And that I have to, like, I see it as this reciprocal relationship. When I trust and I show up, and it's like you were saying, like having things scripted and wanting to have it sort of in this controlled container and have an idea of, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Your purpose is saying, well, you can do it that way, but you're totally minimizing what is possible. If you just show up, I will give you everything. But you have to be the one to cross that threshold of trust and faith. And so purpose is saying, I'm over here. And so I step forward and say, okay, I'm here. And then it gives me what I need. And then it's like purpose gives me a handful of seeds. And then my job is to plant those seeds. And when I plant those seeds, as you know, and it's whatever, like for you, it was meditation. Like you had all these seeds that were all about being a meditation teacher. And before that, it was all about fitness and all about whatever. And for me, it was like, you know, stepping into this role of being an intuitive and doing readings and, you know, working with my oracle cards and whatever it was that I was doing. So I was given these seeds and I would plant them and they would give me the most amazing experiences. They would give me all of the things, like finally the money starts coming, finally the experience, and my life gets so satisfying and big. And then over time, purpose says, okay, but this isn't it. Like this, there's more. Like this is like one row in an infinitely large garden. So here's another set of seeds, but you got to cross that threshold again.
It's
So you
that
have,
point when it's like that point when like when we were talking on your radio show, that point of starting to feel discomfort or dissatisfaction in your life is the thing that's giving you the nudge to say, okay, you're ready to grow a bit more.
yeah,
You
totally.
can't just define yourself by what you're doing right now. You can't necessarily define yourself by these friends or this relationship or these habits or whatever.
Yeah,
It's time, push, push, push.
yeah. And we
And I
have to
think
trust that we can say yes to that, and then that gives us the next like bunch of things that we need.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I can see so many people, especially guys in the gay community. Maybe that's just because that's like the majority of the people that I'm around on a regular basis. But I see so many of them, us like reliving the same day and same year over and over and over.
Yeah.
Like, and I did it, I've done it, because you're like, well, this used to be fun. Like going out to clubs and bars and getting shit faced used to be fun. And
Yep.
being catty with each other and talking about clothes and talking about pop music, both of which I still do, but not as a substitute for real conversation or a substitute for like real meaning in my life. And like you said, the satisfaction is the word.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't feel satisfied with just living that.
And I don't need, like, I like nice things. I like, you know, being silly and funny and listening to pop music. And I love Drag Race and I love, you know, gay culture, being campy, whatever, but it doesn't define me anymore. I don't need those things to tell me who I am. I don't need those things to feel a sense of value or a sense of belonging. I like those things because I like them. But if I had to pack a bag tomorrow and say, okay, Andrew, you get one pair of jeans, one pair of shoes, and, you know, 5 t-shirts, I could do it and be just as happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like my happiness is not staked on anything that's outside of me anymore. And there was, you know, you and I lived this life together. Like we've been through all of those stages.
Every stage.
It was like, okay, you know, it's like, so Monday and Tuesday, you're completely wrecked and hungover and you're saying to get, you know, praying to God, swearing, I'm never going to do drugs again. I'm never going to party again. I'm never going to do this again. And then Wednesday or Thursday rolls around and you're feeling better. And then the conversation starts, okay, where are we going to go this weekend? And then it's the whole thing over and over and over. And then, okay, now I'm going to go spend $500 on a pair of jeans and $1,200 on a pair of shoes or whatever it is. And, you know,
and maybe that's going to make me feel
maybe
better.
That's going to make me feel better. But 6 months from now, they're just a stupid, ugly pair of shoes that aren't cute anymore. Right. And I'm terrified now that I'm going to go out and people
someone's going to see me in those shoes that are judging.
Those are like last season. And literally that for me felt like a death. The idea that I would be judged and that I would be seen as inferior because I didn't look a certain way felt like death.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that.
It's or, you know, and it's also like I was having lunch today in Williamsburg and I was eavesdropping on these two gay guys having a conversation about Scruff and Grindr and like hooking up. And they, you know, probably in their late 20s, early 30s. And it just reminded me of that time where I was, because, you know, for me, like drugs, alcohol, all of that I could easily leave behind. But my big one was sex, right? Like the sexual compulsion and the need to be defined and to be, you know, have that void filled, no pun intended, by sex, by random meaningless sex. That for me, giving that up felt like terror. It was terrifying because what it did is it required me to connect with myself. And I see that Grindr and Scruff, and I'm not saying it's always this way. You can have valuable, you know, interactions through these apps. It's all what your intention is. But my intention was, how can I get as far away from myself as possible?
Yeah.
I want to be completely numb to who I am. I don't want to, because that requires me to feel the pain.
Yeah.
And the, you know whatever.
You know what I'm finding really interesting, right? Oh, there's a hummingbird outside my window.
Good omen.
Yeah. What I'm finding really interesting right now is like when you're getting into talking about drugs and sex, that is something that I have not been open with on a social platform. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding myself going, oh, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to share this. But it's
Yeah.
interesting because like it goes along with being open and being a real person.
Yeah.
And it probably goes along with like the gay stuff, the shame of, or just shame in general.
Yeah.
Like if people knew some of the things that I've done in my life, which I don't regret at all because they brought me to where I am. And
Yeah.
but just thinking that people are going to judge me and blah blah blah.
Right, because it's another layer. For me, it's like, I think of it like a callus, right? If there's a part of my body that is calloused, the callus builds up to protect me from pain or to
Mm-hmm.
protect me from trauma. That's why I have it, right? When I go to the gym, I get these calluses because it protects that soft tissue from trauma. And I think when we callous ourselves, it's like, okay, I'm going to put on this front, I'm going to put on this front, I'm going to put on this front, and then everything becomes a defense. And in the middle, here I am, still this sensitive, vulnerable, emotional, loving, feeling self. But I have calloused myself and built up so much of a defense that people can't. And you and I have talked about this, and we won't name any names, but there are certain people that you and I have known throughout our life that it's like, girl, trying to get you to be honest with me is like a fucking
Yeah.
obstacle course. Like
Yeah.
can't even have a conversation with you without you being defensive or catty or making some quip. It's like, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's
Or
exhausting. And for
yeah.
me, it was the same thing. Like, I am exhausted from holding up all of these defenses because I am terrified to be seen as I am. And I think that part of that, we're afraid to show the parts of us that we're ashamed of. We're afraid to show those parts of us that feel raw and vulnerable because that requires exposing the soft underbelly. And the gay community has not always been the kindest place for vulnerability.
Right. Or just the world in general, not even the gay community, just the world in general. If you are, uh, well, maybe this is a preconceived idea. I just thought about this. I just listened to a podcast a week ago of a friend of mine being interviewed, and he was talking about, he was just so honest about his life. It makes me want to cry right now. Because sorry, my phone was acting up. Because it was the most vulnerable I've ever heard anybody be on such a public platform. He was talking about the situation that got him to become sober, and he talked in detail about what happened, and not to glorify the drama of it, but to just be vulnerable and be totally real with what happened in his life and kind of what got him there. And he was talking about sex work. He was talking about all of the stuff that you don't want to talk about because you're going to be judged.
Yeah.
And I saw the reaction on Facebook that no one was judging him. People were like, that is so brave, and thank you for saying those things. And so I think it's the perception that we have that we will be judged
Yeah.
that keeps us from doing that, then keeps us from being vulnerable and honest, than the actual truth of it. And the people who are going to judge us are just terrified of their own truth.
Well,
So
and they're going to judge you they're going to judge you whether you're being honest or not. They're just going to judge you, period. And I think you totally hit the nail on the head that like when there's a part of me that is unloved within me, that is the thing that I am also projecting and terrified of that other people will also not love. Right. So from you to talk about sex or drug use or whatever feels, makes you sort of constrict and you want to protect it. To me, that is a sign, because I have the same thing. Anything within me that makes me uncomfortable with showing it to people or sharing it with people, that's a part of me that I still judge. Because when I love something about myself and when I am completely at peace with an aspect of who I am, I don't care what anybody thinks about it. Really,
totally.
truly, honestly.
Right.
So
And I'm that way in so many areas of my life. Like I used to be uncomfortable with people knowing that I have spiritual practice and that that's something that's important to me. And now I'm just like, oh, who cares? That's like, it's one of the last things I need to even think about. It's
Yeah,
not an issue.
totally.
Yeah, you're right.
And
Yeah.
I think when we show ourselves, when we show our vulnerabilities, we give permission for other people to drop their defenses. Because it's like no one wants to be the first one. But once
Right.
you do that and you're just like, oh, girl, come on, let it out. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Stop holding in the fart. Just let it go. Like, it's,
Yeah.
so uncomfortable. It's making you so, there's so much discomfort around it. And I think you're right that, I know that in the past, I didn't give the gay community enough credit. Like, I think that we're just all, it's so many of it. And I'm not saying everyone is like this, but my experience was a room full of wounded people desperately trying to prevent their wounds from being seen. But really, at the core of it, that's what they want more than anything, is to just be loved as they are and to be seen as they really are, and to know that, girl, as you are, it's okay. Like, you're enough right now. Like, you don't need to do anything to be worthy of the love that you are so, so wanting. And I think that that's when you really discover your purpose. Because I think for me, what I realize is my purpose requires me to not care at all what anybody else thinks, because it requires a complete and total level of honesty that is oftentimes very uncomfortable.
I think that's true for probably every person.
Yep.
Right? Because you can't make your decisions off of what other people will think, or else you're not living authentically and you're not stepping forward into the unknown.
Yeah.
You just can't.
No, you can't. You have to trust yourself implicitly and all of it. And you have to, you have to love those parts of yourself that just feel so ugly and so scary and so dark. And you don't have to share it with everybody, but when you find, this is what I know to be true. Like, and Leonard and I were talking about this when we went to brunch last week, and I was talking to him about the gay thing and was still sort of trying to figure out, like, really what I was doing is I was trying to figure out how to control it. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what I want is a message that I can control and craft so that I can completely control the outcome and, prevent myself from being judged. It was just the fear in me. But what we were talking about was, when I said to him, we are so, I feel, and I think this is happening across the country and across the planet, but, speaking about my specific experience, I think is what makes it universal, is the more specific we are, the more universal things end up becoming. And it's like this idea that we will never find acceptance outside of us until we have created it within ourselves. Because how will we even know what it feels like?
Yeah.
How will I even know what it feels like to be accepted if I have not cultivated that within myself?
Well, if you don't know who you are, then you don't know what you are not presenting to the person that you're trying to be accepted, the whole version of yourself.
Right.
And that's where so many of us, myself included, who've gotten so angry for being in a relationship where you feel like the other person doesn't get you, or doesn't know you, or doesn't respect you, or doesn't accept you. And they don't know you.
Yeah.
They know this little bit that you put up in front of them, and you're like, these are all my best parts. What do you think? And they're like, these are great. But there's not a lot of depth. And so then the person's like, okay, well, this is what you are. You're kind of a shell of a human. And so I'm going to move on.
And you're really pretty. And right.
Why didn't you love me? Why didn't you love all this dirt, this deeper side to me?
Because you never showed it to me.
Right.
And you don't love it in yourself, so you don't think that it's worthy of love, so you would never take the risk of showing it. It's like we spend, and I see that in my own relationship, spending so much time, like, exhausting myself trying to curate this collection of masks that I thought would please them. Right? Like, let me just make this beautiful diorama of who I want Andrew to be.
Yeah.
I'm so focused on getting you to like who I think you want me to be, rather than just showing up and saying, this is me, right? Warts and all, this is who I am. And it really, and I deal with this myself, being 45, I'm starting to see major changes in my body, like, going back to the gym and taking care of myself and, realizing, like, okay, and you and I've talked about this a lot, like, who am I working out for? And in the past, I was working out so I could get laid. I was working out so that guys would
Right.
pay attention to me, really.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, yeah, I like to look cute. And of course, if someone else thinks I'm cute, then that's fine too. But really, it's about I want to feel strong, I want to feel healthy, and I just want to feel good in my clothes. Right? I don't want to feel the discomfort of like, being out of shape. But it's still, there's that part of me that is so aware of the crazy, like insane expectations that we hold ourselves to in the gay community, and this weird collective dysmorphia that we have about what's an acceptable body type and what's
Yeah.
attractive and what's not. And finding myself still fighting up against that within myself of like, like checking myself out as I'm walking down the street and catching my reflection in the mirror and being like, oh, suck that shit in. And, like totally
Or
like,
expecting your body to not change. Like
yeah,
I had that this weekend. I was in Vegas, so I was at a hotel, and this hotel so weird. It's only a Vegas hotel, has like a mirror basically in the shower.
everywhere.
Yeah. And so I turned around and got this weird angle of myself, and I was like, oh, that's what my body looks like from that angle? Like, that's weird. Like, huh. And I had a moment of being like, well, that's not what I remember my body looking like, but I'm thinking of my body when I was 25 or whatever. Yeah. And expecting my body to be exactly the same as it was when I was 25.
Totally. And the other day I went shopping for a new pair of shorts, and I bought a 33 waist of shorts. And I was like, it was really a moment of like, oh, am I really having to say goodbye to my 32-inch waist? Like, is that, it was like a moment of silence in the dressing room for like, I will never be able to wear these shorts again. And it literally was like, and it's fine, whatever. If that's the biggest problem I have, then girl,
right.
Me, hashtag blessed. But it was really a moment of like, oh, okay, yeah, bodies change, bodies shift. Eventually it's going to fall apart completely, and, I'm going to die and be in the dust. But you're right, it is this unrealistic expectation. And isn't it funny how it's like, well, I'm doing the same things I was doing 20 years ago, right? I've been repeating the same behavior, so why shouldn't my body match? And when those two start to move away from one another, I think that's when we start to realize like, oh, yeah, girl, no.
Things are changing.
Yeah, you're the guy that you used to roll your eyes at when you were 25 years old.
Oh, totally. And talk about like a sassy, bitchy, like stereotypical gay dude, like us in our early 20s.
You and I, it was like, how critical can I be? It was like the fucking bitch Olympics. Like how,
that was like the basis of our friendship.
Totally. How catty and like cruel and jaded and witty can I be? And then just, oh, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But
at the same time, but I think it's kind of interesting because at the same time, like both of us had, because we knew each other so well, that was like our going out persona. But then we also had those conversations when we were together because we were so close that we could talk about the spiritual questioning and all of that deep stuff. And I feel like the extra bitchiness is in a response to this like
vulnerability,
much deeper calling and feeling.
Yeah, totally.
Come here.
It was like a deeper sense of sensitivity. Oh, and it's Rosie.
Look at her.
I want to squish her. Did she just wake up from a nap?
Yes.
She's looking so soft and cuddly.
She's like, I'm bored.
Hi. Daddy, I don't like it when you talk. I like it when you walk.
Quiet, please.
You can be quiet or take me for a walk. Yeah, and it's interesting. And isn't it funny now, because the parts I see in our friendship, having been friends for so long now, the parts of ourselves that we used to reserve really for just you and I and the other close, people in their inner circle, now that's the part of myself that I wear on the outside, right? And if I am ever making like a quip, witty quip or a bitchy comment, it's usually just between you and I. Like that's something, and you have the context to know that it's just me being, having a moment of being silly or stupid, or, having my own insecurity. But it's and that's, I guess, more than anything, what I really want. One of the main things I want to do with this whole gay thing project is I want to create a space where it's okay for men to bring that version of themselves and show that. Like
Right.
bring that sensitive, vulnerable, you know, open, loving, beautiful part of yourself and show that part and let that part be seen and lead with that. And you can still, and you know, and maybe this is something we should continue, like another top, you know, maybe we should have a series of these. Like when you and I used to talk all the time about like when we were starting down this spiritual path of like, well, I'm going to lose my sense of humor. Like nothing's going to be fun. I'm not going to be funny. I'm not going to be fabulous. And the other day I kept thinking like, it's time to redefine fabulous. Like that's what was going through my head.
Yeah.
And I really think that for myself, that's what I've had to do is I've really had to redefine like, okay, but what really does bring me pleasure and bring me joy? And it's not being
Right.
that sassy drunk bitch anymore.
Right. Well, yeah, because when you were saying like to create a space for gay men, let's just say it's for men right now,
Yeah.
for gay men to like be that vulnerable and open. If I would have watched our conversation on video and heard you say that a few years ago, I would have been like, ew, that sounds creepy. You know what I mean?
Ew,
Like that
no, I
sounds
don't want
creepy.
that.
Like does that mean that, you know, then we're all gonna be in a cuddle puddle later,
Right.
like some weird
Or y'all
thing
gonna
that
scissor later or something.
right?
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know what my point is was of that, except for that, like, I think spirituality and vulnerability and openness can be different for every single person.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're either this bitchy queen or you are this totally open, like mama bear where
Yeah.
everyone's welcomed in and like put your head in my bosom.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a spectrum there, and you do start to move, and some days you're over here and some days you're over here, and
Yeah.
I
And you
don't know.
still, you know, because I think you're right. It's like, it's not about deleting parts of yourself. It's about letting the authentic part of yourself out and letting that be part of the picture. Right? Like you and I still laugh our asses off. I still have completely surface, superficial interests and things in my life that are important and valuable to me. And I still love those parts of myself. It's just that now I've sort of tempered that and I've balanced that equation with letting also my authentic self get just as much airtime. And I still have a personality. I'm still the same person that I was 20 years ago, or whenever it was that you and I first met. But I feel like it's a more authentic version of myself now.
Yeah.
It's more grounded and it's much clearer. And I'm really, you know, I would say the thing that's really missing is predominantly this fear of being judged or seen or excluded, because now that just doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
And I think part of that's also just age.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think, you know, in my 40s, what I've really realized is, man, life is just way too fucking short to worry so much about what other people think.
Oh my God. I was
And
just
when am I going to
thinking,
give that up?
yeah, I was just thinking that recently that it was around 40 where it really started to settle in that I do not give a shit.
Yeah.
And not in a dismissive way, but it's just not part of what defines me anymore is
Yeah,
other
I just don't
people.
have time anymore. Like I
Yeah.
spent years, decades consumed by what other people thought about me. And it's funny because I became more aware of that, you know, moving back to New York, a lot of those fears were still present, right? The fear, like the old version of myself, because when I left, I was so unhappy and in such a dark place when I left in 2005. And then coming back, I had this moment of clarity. This is, you know, probably after I'd been back for like a month, and I was on the subway and I was just wearing like jeans and a t-shirt, like nothing fancy, but you know, even what I would wear to like the gym or what I would wear on the subway to the grocery store was like, I had to plan an outfit. And it's because I was so insecure. It had nothing to do with liking nice things and wanting to put on a good face. I mean, that's part of it.
Totally.
It was
That's the
really,
difference.
it was driven by this insecurity and this fear of like, oh my God, well, what if someone sees me and I'm not wearing the cutest thing that I just bought yesterday or whatever? Ugh, girl, who cares?
Yeah.
But you couldn't tell me that then. You couldn't tell me that then because that was
Right.
a priority.
Right.
And I still like to look cute, but it's just not at the top of my list anymore.
Yeah, and it's not something that is consuming your energy.
Yeah, and I don't really think that back then, what I thought was cute was defined by the external. I was looking to
Right.
other sources to tell me what was cute. Now, what is
Right.
cute is what I feel good in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. So, what do you say, like, before we wrap up, like, what do you say to someone who's looking for their purpose? Like, if we want to give people practical stuff, or what has helped you find your purpose?
Um,
Like, if someone came to you today and was like, okay, I'm a client potentially, and I'm lost and miserable and unhappy in my life, and I don't know what I want and I don't know where I'm going, I just know that there's something else.
that knowing that there's something else is the best place. Like, put your focus and your attention there.
Yeah.
Um, I would ask them what kind of internal dialogue they're having, because usually we do know what's next, but there's all of these stories that we've told ourselves, or other people's stories that we've told ourselves, that we hold on to and use that as the what reality is, the container of what reality is. And usually it's, what we've been taught by our parents, or what we see in our friend group, and we just rehash and regurgitate that old story without questioning what we think for ourselves. So I guess starting to uncover what the stories are from other people that we've taken on that we don't actually believe,
Yeah.
by writing or journaling, and then writing what we do believe in response to that. Like, I've just done that recently, so that I have a coach, myself, um, and we've been talking about money and abundance and finances, and something that I've really put a lot of my new time into, because it's just an area of my life that's felt like I haven't been wanting to look at it. And so now that I'm looking at it, it's been really easy, because I've done this in other areas of my life, but I've just, for whatever reason, haven't wanted to do this with money and finances, to write down, okay, what are my beliefs about myself and money?
Yeah.
And then, do I actually believe that? Because once I wrote it down, and I write it down as if it's someone else, or write it down myself and then read it back to myself as if someone is sitting across from me and telling me, like, one of the beliefs is that I'm not worthy. And I think everyone has that belief in some way, about money or about love or whatever. And if I sat down at a table and someone across from me said, "You're not worthy of money," I'm like, fuck you. You know, that is not the truth. Like, where did you come up with that? That just seems like a random concept and idea.
Yeah.
Of course I'm worth abundance. Of course, I'm worthy of these things that I want in my life. So then when I wrote down the response to it, it was just like the easiest thing. It came so naturally. But had I not just taken a few minutes to do that practice, I wouldn't have that new response to the question,
Yeah.
to the false belief.
Totally.
So I guess I would tell people, if they want to find their purpose, to question their beliefs first, because they're usually not their own. And then they can start getting closer to what their true beliefs are. And then they can start trusting themselves
Yeah.
and not listening to outside sources. Like, not even trusting what we're saying. Like, does what we're saying ring true? Because if not, then don't worry about it. And maybe, the advice that you get that you're hearing now doesn't ring true, but like, hearing it again in a year, maybe it will. And that's why, like, the truth, quote unquote, the truth of life and spirit, and just the truth in general, is unending and never changing. But there are teachers that speak this truth in so many different ways. It's the same thing. We're all saying the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
And you just have to hear it over and over and over, because, you know, like we were saying, a couple of years ago, hearing the teachings that I'm hearing now were not relevant, and they didn't ring true to me. But now, from this new perspective, some of those teachings just make the most sense in the world. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent, but
No, I feel the same. I feel the same way. I think it's kind of similar. My advice would be to write down your fears, just your general fears. Like, what are you really afraid of? Like, and let yourself just let it rip. Like, don't edit yourself. Don't hold back. Nobody else has to read it, but really sit with yourself and be honest. Because I think that when we really see those fears on paper, number one, we realize how silly most of them are. And we realize over time, especially if we do the exercise and say, okay, what were you afraid of 10 years ago? You know, those fears almost never come true. And if they do come true, they never come true in a way that you're not able to contend with them. But when you're in that moment of just being paralyzed by fear, oftentimes the first step is just to put it on paper so that you get it out of yourself, so that you can look at it objectively, and you can just look at it as a thing that's a phrase that you've written down, and then you say. And, you know, it's also something to keep a journal. I tell people, keep a journal and just become aware of that voice, become aware of that soundtrack that's in your head that we so often just become so inured to that we don't even really pay attention to. You know, it's like what I was telling you a couple years ago when I was going through all my relationship stuff and really my worthiness around love and being in a relationship and what I thought about myself. And I was, you know, totally fucking in love and smitten with that guy. And how we had just gotten off the phone and had a really good conversation. I was feeling really, really good. And I was making lunch and I heard this voice say, oh, well, that means he doesn't like you, because guys who are nice to you don't like you. And I was like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah. Hold on.
Where the hell did that come from? And it was something that I wasn't even consciously aware of, this belief, and it just showed itself to me. And so when we start to just become aware of those thoughts and we document those thoughts and those fears, then what it does is it allows us to personify them in a way that I can stop letting you drive the bus and you stop directing my life. And now I can turn, and it's not about going to battle with them. It's not about going to war with them or trying to delete them. It's about asking them, what do you want me to know? Like, why are you here? You've been telling me this for 40 years. Why? What's going on? What's beneath this story? Because it's usually something that the mind at one time did as a defense mechanism, right? It thought it was keeping us safe. It thought it was helping us. It thought it was doing its job. But we so often forget to discard thoughts and beliefs. Like, you know, we go through our closet, every 6 months or whatever, you know, we discard stuff like crazy, where everything's disposable. But for some reason, we just never think to do the same thing with our library of beliefs and stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it is just as simple as that. Sometimes it, like in my own experience, it is as simple as writing those things down. And a lot of times they boil down, you know, if you write down 25 fears, they usually boil down to 1, 2, or 3 types of fears that can kind of be categorized into one. And sometimes just seeing them, you're like, wait a minute, that is so ridiculous. That's not actually who I am anymore. That's it's a belief since I was 12 years old that has no relevance to me as an adult in this life.
Yeah.
And because I think a lot of times people can also get stuck on process.
Yeah.
And, you know, spend the next 10 years processing their fears, because on the other side of this is my purpose, but I don't really actually have to step into the unknown and into my purpose if I'm just processing my fears for the next 10 years.
Totally.
So once you've taken action and you've gotten a little more clear, actually move in the direction of what feels good. Like we've talked about this in both of our videos in different ways. Once you start becoming once you get all of the fear voices out of the way, then you can start listening a little bit more, and you can have intuition and insight and guidance. But it's not going to come in the way that you think. Like if we say insight to me happens all day long, all the time. Like walking the dog, I look at a plant and I have this thought about whatever. It could
Yeah.
be a passing thought, but I am grabbing onto it and going, oh no, this is something that I believe. This is something new that leads to another thought, that leads to inspiration to take some action on something.
Yeah.
I think that we like give ourselves so much to do and so much entertainment, and try to process things. And there's just like all this input that there's never time to start to listen to the intuition, which will lead to an action, which leads to more intuition, which leads to the next action, like we were talking about, just like going step by step into your purpose.
Totally. And I think you're right about, not getting stuck on confronting and processing and releasing things so much, because you could do that for your entire life, with no real end in sight. You're frozen. Are you there? So Ryan's phone died. That's what happened there. So we'll end the conversation there. What I was going to say really quickly is that getting stuck in process, I think, is something that we often tend to do. Like, oh, let me just clear, let me heal, let me release, let me understand. But ultimately, I think what's important to know about fear, especially, is that fear will always be there. The option for fear will always be there. I don't think it's necessarily about getting rid of your fears as so much as it is becoming aware of your fears and familiar with them and learning to love them, learning to love those parts of yourself that are still afraid. And rather than trying to control your fear, you just get to the point where your fear no longer controls you. But that's it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. More to be continued. Bye.